That's much more of what an accountant is than the stale, pale male stereotype that people think that we're just middle-aged white men in suits who are able to support a content creator getting a boob job as an allowable expense.
If you're going to earn anything over than like £1,000, then that's when you should register. Is that a myth I've heard, or is there some truth in that?
Truth.
Okay.
Fact.
Okay.
Gabby, drop in fact. Our accountancy practice is one of the fastest scaling accountancy practices in the UK. We've got a 400% growth rate year on year. I'm changing the entire world of accounting and finance. And for me, that job title didn't exist.
Would you say you've had any adulting failures?
I don't know if it's a failure. I very unexpectedly lost my hearing 18 months ago.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Talk Twenties podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, keep your messages coming in, just like Sophie did, who messaged us to say, I just want to say I adore the podcast, keeping me sane during the weird and wonderful 20s. Love the Bo Anderson episode so much. Thanks, Sophie, for that message. And if you're not already, make sure you follow and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode of us in the studio.
On today's episode, we're going to be learning everything you need to know about going self-employed and running your own business from an accounting and finance perspective. We're very lucky to be joined in the studio by accountant, business owner and content creator Rachel, also known as Accountant She. Yes, the pun is intended. Rachel, welcome to the podcast. It's amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in. You're here to teach us all about accounting and tax and everything you need to know about, starting a business and going self-employed. So excited to have you here.
Just encouraging people to turn off now.
No, but I think what you do on your social media platforms and throughout your whole business is actually make this kind of stuff understandable, because everyone needs to learn about it if they're going to go self-employed at some stage in their life or they're going to start their own business, but nobody teaches you this stuff in school.
Oh my gosh, I literally spend my entire life saying to prospective clients or people that are thinking about becoming an accountant, like, this is the stuff that we're not taught at school. And actually that's much more of what an accountant is than the stale, pale male stereotype that people think that we're just middle-aged white men in suits. And so my job is to disrupt the accounting industry. So I'm trying to disrupt what it means to be an accountant, how it feels to have an accountant, and what it means to scale an accountancy practice. So our accountancy practice is one of the fastest scaling accountancy practices in the UK. We've got a 400% growth rate year on year. And 2 years ago, we were on a dining room table, and now we're a team of 12 with over 600 clients.
That's
amazing.
Absolutely insane. And just to put out there, we do still have people in our 20s on the podcast. Rachel is only 29. And I can't believe you're saying all of that, because 400% growth is absolutely crazy. And when you say that, that's really happened, or it's really blown up in the past couple of years, I think it'd be really nice to kind of take it back to kind of initially what drew you to a career in accounting and why you wanted to help people with this side of their business or with this side of their work.
Yeah, for sure. So my sort of entry route into accountancy, and they said accountancy, my entry route into accountancy wasn't a straight line, and I think it's not for a lot of people. Lots of people sort of accidentally become an accountant through a love of maths, or like if you Google my personality type, which is INTJ, it literally tells you based on your personality type that you should become an accountant. And yeah, for me, it wasn't a straight line. I didn't come from a background of like privilege or wealth or financial education. It wasn't stuff that was spoken about over my dining room table when I was having dinner. And so I definitely had a misconception over what I thought sort of background you had to come from to even become an accountant. And so I, as a result of that, launched the first ever corporate bursary scheme to fund somebody who can't afford to become an accountant through levels 2, 3 and 4 of AAT to become a fully qualified accountant. Like that was one of my goals from the very beginning, because my journey wasn't a straight line. So I did not go to university. I was a straight A student, and then my home life just wasn't a situation that I felt comfortable leaving at the time. And so I turned down unconditional offers to go to university and took a job earning £3 an hour as an apprentice in my, we'll come on to that later. Took a job in like the local finance team of my local council. And so earning £3 an hour, it like used to cost me more in public transport to get to work than it did that I made at work. And so I went to night school and was paying for that on top, and then just worked in like pubs and clubs till like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to just be able to afford to get to and from work. And then from there, I trained at top 75. So the top 100 in accounting is the top 100 practices in the UK. And so I worked for a top 75. So trained at a really, really high level. And I loved accountancy. I loved what it brought me as a person. Like, accountancy's done so much in my personal life. I think you learn so much about business and financial education. And like, I always describe it as one of those jobs that you get insight into how the whole world works. Like, so it blows my mind that people go through their whole life not understanding a lot of these things. And so you get to see a lot of the ins and outs, but more importantly, you get to like see inside businesses.
Yeah.
Small businesses, scaling businesses, good businesses, bad businesses. You get to see everything from what they spend their money on all the way through to like what personality types work well in business. For us, like, you could look at our top 10 clients. I guarantee lots of them don't have any official formal education, or like, I went off to do an MBA because that's what I thought you had to do to be successful in business. And actually, if I looked at people within our practice that earned over £100,000, actually probably very few of them do. And so, yeah, trained at a top 75, met my husband there. We are two teetotal accountants who married each other and started a business. So we are wild and number one on every dinner party guest list. Yeah, and so for us, we met at work and we both just absolutely loved the business side of accountancy, but both felt very like demoralized and uninspired by top 75 life, a lot of the culture, like non-transparent pay matrices. If you had a degree, even if it was in geography, you got paid more than the next person. Gender inequalities. So there's a 50-50 split in accounting, male, female, but very, very few roles are filled. Like, management positions and partner positions are actually filled by women. And so I always believed that like, you can only be what you can see, and I couldn't see it. And so like, I had very low career aspirations for myself. And so, yeah, James and I decided to try and change it, try and disrupt it. And Gabby and I were talking about this earlier, like, sometimes it's really hard when the sort of career aspirations that you have for yourself, or like where you've got to in your career, have already far surpassed any dream that you have. And yeah, for me, like, I don't know, I put expectations on myself. I put limitations on myself. I thought that like, what I do now isn't on a job, like a list of job titles that you could be. I'm a content creator, I'm an author, I've done TED Talks, set up bursary schemes. Like, I'm changing the entire world of accounting and finance. And for me, that job title didn't exist. I didn't know that you could create TikToks and dance around like a lunatic whilst teaching people financial education and making business owners feel safe to ask stupid questions because they see us be stupid on the internet. And like, that's such an important part of it. And so I'd put so many expectations or limitations on myself. And that's when I said to James, like, we were heading into the pandemic. It was the summer of 2020 when I quit my job. And I said to James, like, there's space. I had just started an MBA because I thought you had to have an MBA to like be recognized, and not going to university was such a big insecurity for me. I said to James, like, there's space. People are becoming self-employed. People are getting furloughed. People are getting made redundant for the first time. They are going to social media to start those businesses, and that's where we need to be. James laughed at me and said it was a terrible idea. And I said, okay, it is a terrible idea. I'll do it in my free time. I'll work with you 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I'll work on a portfolio. We'll grow an accountancy practice, but I'll do this in my free time and let's see what happens. I wrote a book called The Tax Guide for Influencers and just self-published it online. It's just an ebook. Sorry, it's not just an ebook. It's an ebook.
It is an ebook.
And yeah, and it has sort of exploded since then. So now we have a community of 22,000 people online, and it's growing every single day. And yeah, sorry, that was the longest answer in the world to how I got into accounting and finance. But yeah, that's my not straight line journey.
Really, really interesting. I just love how you said, you know, even through what you've just explained there, accounting is so much more than just the maths. You know, I like to think of it as a way that you apply maths, but with so much logic, and especially in business.
Yeah.
I ran away from a career in accounting. My dad's an accountant, so he kind of tried to usher me in that route. I was always like, I'm not good at maths, so I don't want to do it. But I did go into business, and then I realized that accounting and finance did catch up to me, and I had to do the numbers. But again, when you apply it to business, it's so much more than just the number. And like I said, it's logic. You've obviously done a lot of the right things that has helped you now to build an accountancy practice, to do everything that you're doing. But I think we can learn a lot more from your mistakes and your advice than your wins. So I wanted to ask, what is the biggest mistake people often make when they decide to go self-employed?
Oh, it's such a juicy question. So not my mistake, everyone else's.
Yeah.
The most common mistake we see is letting your numbers run you, not running your numbers. So when you become self-employed, if you're employed, you have a manager, you have a job description, and your life's pretty like straightforward. And if you work really hard one day, you have a boss that's like, do you know what? You've worked really hard today. You can clock off and go home. When you're self-employed, your day is literally endless. Your to-do list never ends, and you don't have anybody patting you on the back to tell you you've done a great job and you can go home. And actually my job is to translate all of that hard work, all of that blood, sweat, tears, the lack of sleep, all of that stuff that you put into a business. It's my job to teach you to use the numbers to decide when to pat yourself on the back and actually when you can clock off early. So the biggest mistake that we see is people not tuning into those numbers sooner, because those numbers can do everything for your business. I'm obviously an accountant running a business, so like I'm sort of like slightly more swayed towards that, but like not planning and saving for tax would be like the number one mistake we see people do. I think there's a reason that when you're on payroll, it's done for you. It's because it's terrifying. We're not taught it at school, and actually it's really, really difficult. And so the number one mistake we see is not planning and saving for tax sooner.
I think a lot of people will be even confused from the get-go in terms of the difference between being self-employed and having a limited company. Accountancy 101.
Okay.
Can you explain this for us?
Absolutely. Okay, so the difference between a sole trader and a limited company. So in the UK, there's two different ways that you can be self-employed: sole trader, limited company. When you're a sole trader, you are trading as yourself. So Rachel, the accountant, is the same person as Rachel Harris, the individual. We sit on the same seat. I am paying very similar taxes than I would in employment. I'm trading as an individual like I would in employment. The only differences, they're big differences, are that you are responsible for filing and paying your tax yourself. So you're responsible for calculating your own taxes and also the frequency at which you pay tax. So rather than paying tax monthly, you're paying it either 6 monthly or 12 monthly. The equivalent to being self-employed on payroll would be if you're on a 40K salary, your boss giving you like 20K one week, 20K the next week, and being like, don't forget to plan and save for tax. And you're like, obviously I'm not going to because I don't know how. So that is sort of what being a sole trader is. You are one in the business is you are the business. Similar taxes to being employed. Being a limited company is a separate legal entity. And there's a couple of different reasons, like 3 top reasons that we see people become limited companies as opposed to sole traders. So the first is tax efficiency. Limited companies pay a different type of tax. They pay dividend tax. And there's also more than one way that we can extract profit from a limited company to yourself as an individual. The second reason we see people become self-employed, the word limited in limited company means limited liability. And this is very attractive to lots of people for lots of different reasons. It means that rather than you trading as yourself, the business is you and you are the business, you become a completely separate legal entity. So the business is on one seat, you are on another seat. What happens in the limited company can't come back to you personally. What happens to you personally can't come back to the limited company. That's really attractive. Things like insurance policies not being in your own personal name can help you sleep at night. Tax bills being in your own personal name can help you sleep at night. And so for most businesses, the biggest liability they ever have is their tax bill. But if you are a lorry driver, for example, and you get finance on a lorry, like that's a pretty hefty loan to take out. All of those things sitting with a limited company rather than you is very attractive. And I am sponsored by being able to sleep at night as a business owner. So lots of people really like that one. And then the third and final reason that people become limited companies is a status symbol. Lots of people know reasons 1 and 2. And so reason number 3 is the status of being a limited company generally means that you're making good money. You need that separation because you've got sort of pretty hefty liabilities in your business. And so we do a lot of work with content creators and influencers. And sometimes we see they're actually able to like pitch for bigger work because they're a limited company, because the perception is there that like they're a business person doing business things. Yeah.
Debt. Let's talk about it. Have you got different debt or bits of borrowing that you're currently trying to pay off right now? Well, this is the part where we talk about our sponsors, Zopa Bank.
Zopa's debt consolidation calculator works out if you could save money on interest repayments or pay off your debts quicker by consolidating them with a Zopa loan. So instead of paying off multiple existing debts from lots of different lenders, you just have one regular payment per month. So there's not as much to keep track of.
It's not for everyone though. As with everything, make sure you do your research. But if you are someone that's looking to save on interest or pay off your debts, this could be really helpful for you.
Yeah, download the Zopa app and check out the debt consolidation calculator. Zopa's personal loan representative APR is 19.9%.
You said something there, Rachel, the T word, a very bad word.
A scary word.
A scary word, taxes. And a big part of paying your taxes is also having knowledge or getting set up with HMRC. What do people need to know about getting set up with HMRC in the right way to avoid those nasty tax charges and even scarier, like tax evasion and, when it gets really serious.
Words.
Yeah.
Yeah, so top tip with HMRC is to register as soon as possible. So we grew and scaled our business during the pandemic. A lot of people did the same, sort of become self-employed during the pandemic. They maybe got made redundant or got furloughed. Again, now with the cost of living crisis, we're seeing people either want to take control of their expenses or actually increase their income through launching side hustles. And so registering as self-employed as soon as possible is the number one top tip. Again, very, very important for sort of accidental business owners because it's not really a straightforward self-employed journey. If you're intentionally becoming self-employed, it's quite intuitive that you register as self-employed at the beginning, but specifically for self-employed business owners, registering as self-employed as soon as possible is my top tip. Super, super straightforward to register with HMRC. So you just go onto their website. It takes 5 minutes. It's actually quite anticlimactic, so you don't even get a party popper emoji to congratulate you on your new self-employed life. So you just go onto HMRC and register as self-employed, and then they will do 2 things. So they post you an activation code, which is where they post a code to your home address to prove that you live there. You then enter the code into HMRC Online and it activates your account. And then the second thing is they also send you your UTR. So keep that super handy because you'll need that in January when you have to file your tax return. And a UTR is a unique tax reference. So that's like a national insurance code for people that are self-employed. And that's what HMRC use to track when you file taxes and pay taxes as well. So top tip is to register as self-employed as soon as possible.
Is this a myth that you can earn up to £1,000 without having to register for HMRC? And then if you're going to earn anything over than £1,000, then that's when you should register. Is that a myth I've heard, or is there some truth in that?
Truth.
Okay.
Fact.
Okay.
Gabby, dropping facts. Yes.
Yeah.
So, so you can earn up to £1,000. It's called a trading allowance. So HMRC say for any specific trade, you can earn up to £1,000 total income, completely tax-free. So that's basically HMRC saying, until you go over £1,000, we're going to consider this a hobby and we don't really care about it.
Yeah.
But important thing to note is it's £1,000 total sales. It's not profit. You can't deduct expenses from that total sales. When that goes over £1,000, that's when you need to register.
Yeah. So you've got an Etsy business and your sales you've made £1,000 in sales. You need to register.
Yeah. So for your auntie who's making those face masks and selling them on Etsy, she's got to make a lot of face masks to go over £1,000.
Yeah.
Whereas actually if you're doing sort of consultancy work or you've got retainer clients and you're on a day rate, actually you'll hit that pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. The other side of accounting then, bookkeeping, it can be so boring, but it's so important that you do it right. I'm speaking from a business owner point of view here. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that kind of thing. But for you then, what are your kind of top tips to someone starting out, learning bookkeeping themselves and going to do it themselves? They haven't employed an accountant to do it for them. You have to wear so many hats. How is this another hat that you can take on with ease, basically?
For sure. So number one top tip is to separate your business finances from your personal finances. So the number one way to do that is to set up a separate bank account. So for sole traders, it does not need to be a personal bank account. You can just set up a personal account in your own name, but it be a separate account for your business. And so what you're doing by having those separate bank accounts, separate debit cards, is you're making the choice over whether or not something is allowable or disallowable or business or personal expenditure at the point that you're spending the money. So if you do decide to do your own tax return at the end of the year, you're not having to do the walk of shame through your personal bank account and delete Domino's, delete Netflix, and you're just left with actual business expenses. If you separate those finances as soon as possible, actually for your tax return or to give it to an accountant, you're just downloading an Excel spreadsheet from your online bank account. So separating your finances. So if you're a sole trader, you just need a separate personal account. If you are a limited company, you do need a bank account in the name of the limited company. Separating your business finances is number one. And then again, secondly, it comes back to planning and saving for tax, analysing your financial well-being. So financial education is at the heart of everything that we do. So whenever we take on a client, we do a completely free 1-to-1 hour-long financial education training session. And clients leave that training session with a financial MOT checklist. So how to conduct a financial MOT on yourself. So you don't have to be paying for like monthly bookkeeping or management accounts. You don't have to be paying us the highest level of our services in order to get the highest level of sort of education from your numbers. And so we teach people how to conduct those like financial well-being checks. And so things like making sure your bank account is reconciled. So you've categorized all of those transactions, knowing how much is going out in the next week versus knowing how much is coming in the next week. That's cash flow management. But for most business owners, that's what they do, is what have I got coming in, what have I got going out? So maximizing payment terms, get people to pay you on the shortest terms and pay your suppliers on the longest possible is really, really great cash flow management. And then also planning and saving for tax. So there's lots of online softwares that can help you do it. HMRC have an amazing online calculator where you can put in how much you're anticipating earning and you can set money aside. You can also, using online digital banks, set up rules so that if you're VAT registered, 20% of all of your income immediately goes into a pot called VAT. At the end of every month, you can set up a corporation tax or a personal tax pot and make sure that you're separating that money. And again, as a business owner, that like almost gets you into a growth mindset. So rather than being really confused over like, oh, I've got 10 grand in my bank account, but I actually have no idea how much tax I need to pay. And so I'm just not going to spend anything because I'm a bit scared and nervous, actually suddenly turns into, I have £7,000 in my current account, £3,000 in my tax pot. So actually, what am I going to do with that seven? Am I going to invest it and spend it and grow? Or actually, am I going to like keep it and put it in a savings pot for something else that I'm planning to do? And so separating your finances, taking control of your finances before they take control of you. Like for so many of us, our finances, whether it's business or personal, are so closely attached to our well-being and like our feelings about money.
Yeah.
It's no different in business.
On that note then, because I think I've seen so many self-employed people like say it online, but like, you know, maybe they've sent out invoices that are not being paid by whoever it is that, you know, they've sent those invoices out to. You literally mentioned there that it is in, you know, a business's best interest to try and get paid as much up front and then to take as long as they can to pay. If someone is taking a really long time to make those payments, what can you do from an accountancy perspective? Because I think a lot of self-employed people really worry about that side of things, like having to chase people for money. Like nobody really likes talking about those things. Nobody likes chasing an invoice. What advice would you give to them?
For sure. So to be clear, like maximizing your payment terms with suppliers is within the terms. So like if you've got 30-day payment terms, take 30 days, or at least as close to those 30 days as, you know, you're not going to lose sleep at night that you're going to forget it, but try and maximize those terms. That gives you great cash flow during the time. So do it within the terms. Don't be that guy. But if you have that guy in your life, actually there's some really, really easy things that you can do. So lots and lots of accounting software. So the two big boys at the moment are Xero and QuickBooks. Lots of them actually have, it's called credit control. It's like the scary accounting word for chasing invoices. But Xero and QuickBooks actually have credit control features built into their accounting software. And so they'll have like polite chaser, and then demand.
Really angry one.
That one's red with capitals. And so those accounting softwares can actually, again, teach you how to run your business as a business if you don't know. Also, your accountant can help you. That's something that we help a lot of people with. Certain industries as well are sort of worse or better than others. So like we do a lot of work with content creators and influencers, and actually influencers do not get paid on time. Brands do not respect them. I'm a content creator myself. Like it, within this industry, it's incredibly difficult because from a business perspective, very often the brands see a delayed impact on the work that they're doing. It's not an immediate impact. And so that, you know, they're trying to manage their cash flow whilst not really respecting yours. And so we help a lot of content creators or even influencer agencies help their talent manage their cash flow and chase in a way that doesn't feel uncomfortable, but actually, because very often you, like in your question, you said like it feels uncomfortable, but it shouldn't. And actually, if you're confident in your pricing, you're confident in your payment terms, actually that gives you the confidence to ask for money and chase it. So like for me as a business owner, I don't let anybody become a client until they've signed a letter of engagement, they've gone through anti-money laundering checks, and they filled in a direct debit mandate. So we have to have a direct debit mandate in order for them to become a client. And that's not me invoicing, but that's me saying like, I need your commitment or promise to pay. And so having those conversations as business owners is really, really important, because otherwise I'd just be like, oh, well, I'll just send you an invoice and I'll hope you'll pay it. And actually, like, if anyone's listening to this and they hear me, an accountant running a business, saying like, I don't let anyone become a client unless I know that they will pay me, like, that's okay.
Love that. Good advice.
You've given some amazing advice, both in terms of getting started, but also really taking ownership, both of your finances and, you know, your mentality as well, the way you're approaching things, which I really think is great. So after you've got started and you're doing the things that you've said to do, and then things such as expenses come up, not a lot of people actually know what constitutes an expense.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what actually is an expense and what isn't? And I'm slightly hoping you tell us a story about maybe something that's been expensed in the past that really shouldn't have been.
Or you wouldn't expect to be an expense.
Yeah, so the reason this comes up a lot and the reason lots of people don't have confidence on it is because there's not actually there's a lot of grey area. And actually for different business owners, the answer is different. So the HMRC rule and what we get taught as accountants is that if something is wholly and exclusively for the purpose of the business, it's an allowable expense. So for you guys, you run a podcast, so everything that you can see here, if you turned your business upside down and shook it, everything that came out would probably be an allowable expense, because if you weren't self-employed or hosting a podcast, you wouldn't need to have spent that money. And so accountants can really help you to navigate that. There's lots of obvious ones and not obvious ones. And yeah, we don't specialize with clients. We work with clients in all industries, from content creators, from people who've won Bake Off, all the way through to our local village beekeeper. It's very wholesome, very lovely. But yeah, we've also got clients that work on OnlyFans or in the adult entertainment space. And yeah, we had a client approach us once and say, I'm looking to get some cosmetic work done. I'm looking to get a boob job. Can I claim this as an expense? And we were like, well, no, obviously not. And she said, well, no, not obviously. I've read the HMRC guidance, and the HMRC guidance says that as long as it's wholly and exclusively for the purpose of my business, I can. This isn't. I obviously do get some personal use from having a boob job. However, as long as I can prove that as a result of spending this money, I can increase the turnover within my business and offer services that wouldn't normally be available, I can claim it as an expense.
Wow.
So we were like, that was a fair point, well made. And so what we do in this situation, because we have a lot of financial regulations reporting, if that client gets investigated, it's on us. And so we were like, we're going to call HMRC. So we called HMRC and we actually got advance assurance, which is HMRC saying, yes, we've reviewed this as an individual case, and yeah,
wow,
you can claim it. And so we were able to support a content creator getting a boob job as an allowable expense. And I would just obviously very heavily caveat that with it's obviously a very unique sort of situation, but it is sort of an exceptional case. And I did say I was a disruptor in the accounting industry. So yeah.
True,
absolutely.
True.
Love that. What a story. It's amazing. It's crazy. I think there'll be a lot of people sat at home thinking they either want to start something or they're tiptoeing into something and they really needed a podcast like this.
Or now they're going to get a boob job.
Yeah. Or now they're going to get a boob job. Yeah. But for anyone who's struggling to step into self-employed life or feels like there's quite a few barriers to being able to maybe leave a job and step into, this is what they really want, but they're not really sure. What advice would you give to someone who's kind of wanting to overcome those barriers, maybe access to funding or finance, maybe a little bit of an imposter syndrome? What's out there for them?
Yes, I'm going to step away from being an accountant and just speak as a business owner for a minute, if that's okay. Take off all of the expectations that you have of yourself. See yourself, think of the person in your life that loves you the most and just put their goggles on and glasses on. And just because your job title didn't exist when you were at school or you sat in front of a careers advisor, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. I think very often people in their 20s right now were raised by a very different generation to the one that we actually live and the reality that we live in. And I was raised that life's quite difficult sometimes and money's really hard to get. And actually my experience as a business owner is that if you lead with your heart and you give, you don't become poor by giving. And I have created a business that is so inside and out who I am that work doesn't feel like work, and my outside of work feels just as fun as when I am in work. And so if you build something that's true and honest and who you are, and you're taking the experiences that you struggled with just to make other people's lives better, you will never struggle in business. And that's something that I wish I heard people say. lots of business books teach you that it's really difficult and you have to like have this like 17-page business plan, otherwise you'll definitely fail. And for me, just being kind, and like I came from a career that I had middle-aged white men bosses tell me that I'd be a terrible manager because I'm too soft and I'm a soft personality and my personality type would never do well in business. And actually, like, I'm a really, really good leader because of that. And I do lead with my heart. And so our mission and our values means that we actually only attract employees, co-workers and clients who really have the same set of core values, which means that every single person that we work with, we want to work with. I literally just signed off somebody from their 6-month probation. She's an accountant and she asked when she was going to get a proper client. And I was like, what do you mean, get a proper client? And she said, like, well, you've just been giving me nice ones. And I was like, no, like, that's just the clients that we have. And I think that's where social media and running a business through social media, like, so many people don't understand it. But we've had clients say to us, like, you could have quoted me up to a X amount and I knew I was going to work with you. And it actually didn't matter what you said. It didn't matter. Like, a lot of it didn't matter. I had already consumed all of the content I needed to know that that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So nice.
That's so amazing. That is so amazing. I mean, yeah. They brought a tear to my eye, but I wish there's like a lot more business owners like yourself. You know,
I think a lot of content is about how hard it is. And it is hard. Like, we do 14-hour days, but you get out of it so much more than you ever put in. And I just wish someone told me that like everything that you do today will build the business that you have tomorrow. And I don't know, I've just never had something in my life that was just so reactive to effort. Like, as a business owner, every % of effort I put in, I get 20x out of it. And I'm at the point in my life where, like, I do a lot of work in like the angel investment space, and I speak to business owners about ratios and how much money you can get out of it and what you can get out of it. And why would I invest another penny in anyone else's business when, like, what I can put in mine will multiply by 400 in a year?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope the guys at home listening can kind of feel what we're feeling like. You can really tell when someone is passionate and they're really doing it, like you said, from their heart, which is
energy.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so amazing. But you mentioned there, like, certain things that weren't told to you, certain lessons you could have learned from. I'm quite interested in that. Would you say you've had any adulting failures from maybe lack of advice, or maybe you just messed up one time?
I've had like 14 today. I had to park in a multi-story car park in a city centre, and like me and Tamsin like high-fived each other because I did it. I don't know if it's a failure. I very unexpectedly lost my hearing 18 months ago with like no warning. I grew up hearing. You can probably hear today, like, I don't sound like what people think a deaf person should sound like. And yeah, that was really difficult. It was definitely the hardest thing I've sort of gone through in my whole life, not just my adult life. But it's something that I think you have a choice when something really awful happens to you, and you can just like let that become who you are, or you can take it and like change it for people that come after you. And so for me, like, I do a lot of work with the National Deaf Children's Society to just showcase how accessible accountancy is as a career. Lots of people don't even know that I'm deaf. I just sort of crack on and nod and people like just think I heard them. But also advocating and sort of being what I would consider a little bit outspoken about it, but most people just think it's communicating your needs effectively. But saying, could I sit opposite you? Or me and Gabby went for lunch and I said, like, the sun's in my eyes, I can't see your lips, can we move? It really taught me to advocate your needs and wants, and actually no one's ever said no to me. Like, no one's ever been like, actually no, sit with the sun in your eyes.
We literally just flipped the sofas around because it's easier for you to kind of see us from this way. And actually, I think I prefer it might even stay this way. So thank you for making us do that in the first place. So yeah, it's like making things accessible, but also communicating those needs by the sound of things.
Yeah, like, I think sometimes it's really easy to have in your head, if you ask someone for something, that they'll say no. It's like, no one's ever going to say no. And we were saying earlier, there's not a course you can go on that teaches you how to have a disability that you've never had before. Like, I had a routine operation on the NHS that just went awfully wrong. And the chances of it happening, I'm an accountant, I love statistics. It was like 1 in 10,000 that would happen to someone, and it happened to me. And actually, people don't teach you how to have a disability. And especially as someone who grew up, like I had a very normal upbringing, I could hear perfectly. And so to just be put in that situation, I felt like I had a choice. And so for me, I never wanted to like let it become who I am. I don't know if that's a failure, but it's become a really strong part
story.
of
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, like everyone that we speak to has, you know, lots that is going on. I think what you've just explained there is a prime example of that. Like nobody is perfect. Everybody is trying to work on and get better at something. For you, what are you trying to improve on in your life right now? It can be work, it can be outside of work, it can be whatever you think.
I'm trying to get better at asking for help. That's my New Year's resolution for 2023, is any conversation I have that I think they might have a connection with somebody that I could get introduced to that might put my career further towards my North Star. I'll say like, hey, could you introduce me to that person and get on that podcast? It's DMing Gabby and being like, hey, you've never had an accountant before. Do you want an accountant? Like
and
all of this happened in 2023. So yeah, definitely for me is asking for help. And actually, people don't say no. Also, if they do, it's 2023, just archive the chat. Forget about it.
Love that.
Good advice. Well, it's been amazing speaking to you, Rachel. We always like to end the podcast in the same way, which is looking back to your 20-year-old self. So you're 29 now. Yeah. sorry to mention that. But, you know, you're still in your 20s. And let's take a moment just looking back at 20-year-old Rachel. What's one piece of advice you'd give to her?
Be your whole self in every opportunity that comes your way. And everything that anybody ever criticizes you on, like you will get to the point in your life where you'll be like, like I did it. I turned what you thought was a negative. And actually I have literally thousands of people in my life that think that's one of the best things about me, whether it's being an introvert, being shy, being soft, being quietly spoken, being deaf. Every single thing that anybody outwardly says to you, like you can turn it into a superpower.
What an amazing episode. We thought we were coming for accountancy tips and we've come with like crazy life lessons and mantras to live by. Thank you so much, Rachel.
No,
it's been
amazing
having you in the Talk 20s